You're watching Mugen TV RPG Haven. Experience a fantasy like no other.
Hey guys, MugenLord here, and before we jump into today's topic, if you haven't checked out my previous video where I talked about Final Fantasy VII Remake and its progression and how Square Enix will address the progression system as far as equipment, materia, and even your stats moving into Final Fantasy Remake Part 2. So I definitely want to hear your thoughts, and I love the discussion that we have right now, so if you'd like to add your input into it, I definitely would love to hear what you got to say. So let us dive right into today's topic. Today I want to talk about a legendary JRPG series, or one game in particular, which is Ys VIII, which I have gotten on the PS4 and Nintendo Switch. And it was been a while since I actually talked about Ys on this channel. Some of you guys had checked out my live streams where I played the game, and a lot of you guys enjoyed the actual stream and was asking a lot of questions about the Ys series, because maybe you guys wanted to actually give a Ys game a try yourself. And in this video I just wanted to explain why I love the Ys series and why I believe that the company behind the Ys series is a beloved company that still creates some of the great JRPGs of modern time. So the thing is, Ys was created by a company named Falcon. Now if you guys ain't familiar with Falcon, Falcon is one of the oldest JRPG companies of all time, one of the oldest, and I would say that they've pretty much been around before Square and Enix themselves. So you can pretty much say that Falcon is the father of all JRPGs. These guys started pretty much everything, and a lot of these games has pretty much been inspired by some of the games that Falcon has produced that you see in today's modern JRPGs. So you must show your respect, and you must thank Falcon for inspiring a lot of these Japanese game developers when it comes to JRPGs, because they are definitely responsible for that. And it's kind of sad that Nintendo didn't add a Falcon company character or rep in Super Smash Bros. I think that would have been pretty cool. Now Falcon has created some of the most beloved JRPGs, and the thing is about Falcon, many people don't know much about them because most of their JRPGs have essentially stayed in Japan only. It wasn't until a little bit later, once they started coming over, and they more so hit the handheld, mainly like the PSP, and eventually the Nintendo DS, the 3DS. And so a lot of people pretty much don't know much about them. It's pretty much been niched for the most part, but they definitely have a cult following. And because of their most recent releases of the Trail series, because if you don't know, the Trail series is one of the most beloved, most popular JRPGs from the company, and I dare say has now become more popular than Ys itself, because those two games are pretty much the flagship games that represent their company. And the Trail series is something I definitely got to get into, and I'll definitely make that into a separate video. I had bought the original games on Steam and have yet to actually play them, but we'll get into that much later. But let's continue to talk about Ys. Now my relationship with Ys is the fact is that I haven't really gotten a chance to play it until it was released on the PSP. I don't know what it was. It was a trailer that released for Ys on the PSP, and it definitely caught my interest. It had that Secret of Mana, it had that Legend of Zelda look and feel to it, and I was definitely interested in it. So I definitely wanted to give it a try on my PSP, and I ended up buying it and fell in love with the game. And after I completed it, I was saying to myself, man, I'll definitely have to play more Ys. So eventually I wound up getting a gaming PC and got on Steam, and they had the Ys Origin collection, so I decided to go pick that up, and I started playing that as well, and definitely enjoyed that. I haven't completed it though, but I still enjoy what I played thus far when it came to Ys Origins. Now the thing is, what I like about Falcon and the Ys series, they were able to take 90s and the golden era of JRPGs and able to bring it over into modern gaming and be quite successful of how they go about it. Now Square Enix is trying to replicate that by creating their other studio to pretty much give us those traditional turn-based or those traditional classic JRPGs back in the 90s and everything. And for the most part, it's definitely a hit or miss. And so I definitely get mixed reactions when Square Enix tries to pull that off. But Falcon has always been on point when it comes to giving us that old school JRPG feel in modern gaming. Now, we'll talk a bit about the story and how the Ys series work. Now, I know some of you guys are asking, hey, this is Ys VIII, and you're talking about Ys VIII, and you've been playing Ys VIII. If I want to get into the series, where should I start? Now, my suggestion is, if you want to get into the series, I suggest to get into Ys VIII. It's easier, I wouldn't say easier, but it's more accessible to be able to get your hands on it. You're able to get it on consoles, you're able to get it on PC, and I think it's a good starting point to get into the series to see if you are willing to go back and play the older games. Now, the thing is, I know it's the 8th entry, and some of you are wondering, do I need to have previous history of the past games in order to get into Ys VIII? And the question, or the answer is, no. You don't have to, and that's the good thing about it. And why? It's because essentially when it comes to the Ys titles are pretty much its own self-contained stories and gameplay, even though that most of the games follow the protagonist, the redhead protagonist named Adol, and he goes on many different adventures, and each adventure pretty much have its own story, its own self-contained story. So you don't have to worry about having knowledge of the previous games or anything, even though that some characters from previous games may show up in the following game. Not all of them, but some may pop up, but they don't really expound or make you feel as though that, oh man, like I don't know what's going on because of the relationship that they have. You don't really have to worry about that. You're able to just dive into a Ys game and enjoy it and play it for what it is, and that's the good part about it. Now, when it comes to Ys VIII, when it comes to the story, Adol essentially is now going on his new adventure with his homie. He always have his homie, I think it's how you pronounce it, Dodgy. It's hard to pronounce it, but he's on this new adventure and they're traveling on this boat, and what happens is they end up getting attacked by a kraken, and they end up becoming shipwrecked onto this island. Now, the thing is, the people that's on the ship has end up going missing. So throughout the entire game, as you go onto the island, you're also unraveling and uncovering the mysteries of what's going on in the island, and an ancient civilization that once existed on the island is now having some, I guess you could say, tie-ins to what's going on in current time, and it goes a little bit deep. And I would say it's not like a Final Fantasy game where the story is so deep and it's like it bursts your head or anything, but it's nice, it's entertaining, and because of the characters that's being well developed and enjoyable, it makes you want to coast through the game story, and it keeps you intrigued to see what happens. Now, the best part of every Ys game is always its gameplay. This is where everyone enjoys the Ys games, because this is gameplay, the combat system. Then the combat system is pretty much essentially an action RPG, similar to like Secret of Mana or the older Legend of Zelda games, and you know what I mean. So essentially, combat system, you have your lights, you have your heavies, you learn different techniques, you have combos, you have special attacks, and you also have team attacks, and you also can have up to 2 extra party members in your party at a time, and you're able to switch them in and out by going into your menu. And the decent part about it is, as you're fighting your opponents, you can switch during like I said in my previous video when I was talking about the Marvel Ultimate Alliance, you can have one character perform a special attack and switch to the other, and while that character that you just switched from is using their special attack, you can continue and capitalize off of that with the character that you just recently switched to. Now, the thing is, there's also a paper rock system mechanic as far as weapons and equipment is concerned. What I mean by that is, each enemy has a different attributes depending on that's classified as smash, I believe, piercing, and I believe stab or something like that. So each weapon is classified underneath those 3 types. So when you run across an enemy, you'll see a symbol above them that have that weapon attribute. So a monster will be essentially weak against the character that has that weapon type that can be able to combat it. So that's where the strategy also comes into place too. You have to know when to use certain characters to fight against certain monsters. And then you have some monsters who don't have a overall weakness. You can just, anybody can be able to kill the monster much easily. But the strategy comes in to knowing which type of monster it is and what type or what character you should use in order to take out that type of monster, which I think is pretty cool. But the most important thing to this game, essentially when it comes to Ys VIII, is the camp mechanic. Now, like I said before, Adol and his friends are stranded on an island. So throughout the entire game, you'll be finding yourself traveling on the island. You have to use your map, and you'll be able to find stranded passengers that was on the ship with you. Now the thing is, as you find each stranded person, that person also has like a special ability or a special skill that can be able to contribute to the camp that you have built. So you can find a person that could be able to customize or craft your armor, craft your weapons. You'll find a doctor and a chemist that will be able to allow to, when you bring resources to them, they'll be able to make potions for you, and herbs that'll be able to restore and replenish your health, and also get rid of whatever type of elements that may be added to you, like poison and other things from monsters. And also you'll be able to find other people that's good at pretty much setting up traps around the base, because yes, there's also a mechanic where at certain points of the story, or as you're traveling through the island, you'll have the parrot that the captain leaves behind. The parrot will tell you that your base is under attack, and then you would have to go back, and then you have to actually set up certain people in place in order to set up a perimeter, and you have to fight and fend off the monsters, and it'll give you special experience points towards. It's kind of like a mini game, like defend your base type of mini game, but it also has everlasting effects as far as the story is concerned and your relationship with characters, because there is an affinity type system building in a relationship with characters depending on how you complete certain tasks and quests for those particular characters. So there's a whole lot going on when it comes to the questing in the camp system. And then you can also build campfires once you get to a certain checkpoint, and you can choose to run through the island at night, because certain monsters appear at night, they drop particular items, and also certain quests only happens at night as well. So there's a whole lot of different mechanics that's intertwined in this game. But the most interesting mechanic is the past and present gameplay mechanic, because as you go through the story, you'll find out that there was an ancient civilization that used to once live on this island. Now, I won't spoil the rest of the story, because I think it's an interesting story, and I believe in a sense that it also was a build up from previous games that led to this event. But like I said, you don't need to know the previous history, but this is like an important, essential event moving forward in the Ys series when it comes to this storyline. But there's a past and present event. So Adol isn't the only main character in this game. There's another main character, which is a female protagonist, where you would have to play the past, and you play as her, and she has her own separate gameplay mechanics. So there's going to be times where you would have to travel between past and present, kind of like Link to the Past, Ocarina of Time, because there's some places you cannot access as Adol, so you would have to go back in time, and you'll be able to access those particular areas, or certain chains of events happen in the past when you play as her, and when you do those events, it also affects the present and allow you to progress forward. Now the thing is, you're able to go from the past to the present. Once you unlock this feature, you're able to do it on the whim anytime you want. Now what's important is this game has multiple endings. There's different things that happen depending on your affinity and your relationship with particular characters that you find on the island. Now the thing is, your ending is affected by how many quests you complete, and also by how many people you find on the island. Now, from my first playthrough, I was able to find every last person, but I believe that I was only short. I was only like 95 or 90 or 95% complete when it came to the questing, and that I pretty much didn't get the actual real final ending. But essentially, you definitely have to play a lot of the events in the past. There's a lot of dungeon exploration that you have to do in the past, a lot of questing you have to do in the past if you want to get that full ending, if you want to get the real ending to Ys VIII. But overall, the gameplay, man, is just phenomenal. I enjoy it. It takes me back in the early 90s where JRPGs was at its golden era, and it seemed like Falcon has done a good job to be able to replicate that and still be able to carry that 90s JRPG charm and bring it into modern gaming in a modern era. And I believe that's why Falcon is loved till this day and has such a cult following. And hopefully this company pretty much will grow into the mainstream where people get a chance to actually be able to see what Falcon has to offer. Because if people have yet to play a Ys game or even the Trail series, your guys are definitely missing out. And I think the main thing that really brings charm to the Ys series or Falcon games in general is the music. Oh my god, I love the music to the Ys series. The music just takes me back to the 90s. It takes me back to when I was a kid playing JRPGs. It's just beautiful music. And the funny thing is, even back in the day, Falcon had its own record studio, like a record label, and they used to put out albums for their games because of how beloved their music is. Like, their music is so good. I advise you to go look up in this Ys soundtrack or a Trail soundtrack. You will not be disappointed. Some of the best JRPG music that you can find, even till this day. None of their musics are a miss at all. All their musics are hits. I love the Ys soundtrack, and I always have the Ys music in my playlist and on my phone when I go walking or when I'm exercising or anything like that. I always have the Ys music on my playlist. Definitely enjoy it. But that's pretty much my overall feeling and experience with the Ys series. I love it. I love its characters. The characters are very charming, and I definitely love the gameplay. It's just something that it's just giving me nostalgia, and it's addictive. It just constantly just want me to go right back into that world and just continue to play. And I suggest that you guys go check it out. And like I said before, Ys VIII, if you're looking for a Ys game to actually dive into, I suggest try Ys VIII. Now, Ys IX is out, but I would definitely get into another video with that. I think Ys VIII is better than Ys IX. There's a little bit of things that's been added to Ys IX that I really wasn't a fan of, and it just, I don't know. I think at this point it's about time for Falcon to actually move on to next generation technology. I think they're being held back by continuously just relying on just handheld gaming at this point. But Ys VIII is definitely a game you should get into and give it a try. And if you like it, definitely go on Steam and pick out and play the other games. Or if you can go online to be able to find any of the other Ys games, definitely look into that. But that wraps up this video. If you like this video, definitely I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. And not only that, if you have already played a Ys game, tell me which one that you enjoy and which Ys game was your entry game to get you into the Ys series. Definitely love to hear that. So if you like this video, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and if you wanted to stay intact or informed with more JRPG goodness, make sure you hit that bell to be notified. This is MugenLord signing off. I'll see you game fiends later. Peace out.